What's up, guys? It's LOH at Low Tech. We're actually doing a quick review of the Alcatel Onetouch Idol 3. This is a 5.5-inch Android Lollipop phone, has 16 gigabytes of storage, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and runs Snapdragon 615 inside, 13 megapixel camera on the back, and dual stereo speakers, or dual front-facing speakers on the front. It's a really interesting device because there aren't that many competitors out there at this price range. You can get this device unlocked for AT&T and T-Mobile for about $250, about $200 if you actually pre-ordered. So hopefully sometime in the next couple of months we can get this price down to $200 out the door for everybody. But for now, at $250, it's a really good deal compared to the likes of, say, the Moto G. Overall, we really like the styling. It's very understated compared to what you'll get in a lot of phones nowadays. There isn't really any defining characteristics that make the phone stand out to anybody who might be looking at your phone. It does have the nice little metal idol logo right here, but other than that, the phone really blends in with the crowd. So take that as a plus, take that as a minus. You won't be really standing out with this phone. 5.5 inches is on the big side for a budget phone. Most of the budget phones are going to be about 5 inches or under, but this is actually a very common size for the flagship phones, so you may get mistaken for having somebody who has a flagship, which is not necessarily a bad thing. This phone, right after that, we should say this phone is not a flagship phone. It doesn't perform like a flagship phone in any aspect at all, but overall we like it. The front has a really nice glass screen. It's not Gorilla Glass, it's something called Dragon Tail, and it's really strong. We actually haven't had any scratches or any problems with the screen so far, so that's a plus. The back is plastic and it has kind of like a brushed metal look to it. No scratches so far, although it does kind of attract dust and things like that just because of the way the plastic is formed. The sides, they do have this fake metal plastic all the way going around it. It feels nice. The phone feels nice in the hand. But it being a flat back device, you don't really get a lot of grip for how thin it is. It is a very thin phone. It's thinner than the OnePlus One. It's thinner than the Galaxy Note 4. It's a really thin device, and that can really make it a little unwieldy if you are somebody who is prone to dropping phones. Taking a look at the screen, it is a 5.5 1080p display. It is IPS, so you are going to get some really good angles looking at this device from the side. Nothing really is wrong with the screen. It is a bit warmer than, say, the screen that is on the OnePlus One, but as long as you're okay with a slightly warmer display, that is fine. The screen can get pretty bright, so I haven't had any issues using it outdoors. Although the one negative I will say about the screen is it doesn't get very dark. So if you're a person who likes using their phone in bed or phone at night, this may not be the phone for you, just because at night it is a little bright for me. There have been other phones that get a little bit more dim, and so it's not necessarily a selling point for that. Turning on the phone is somewhat of an adventure, mainly because this phone can be used upside down. So you can actually use the phone 100% with the bottom facing up. So that does mean that the power button is then now on the bottom right side instead of the top left. What's surprising is that at the bottom right side, it's actually easier to press the power button, mainly because of how high or low the button actually is. So when it's faced normal side up, your hand can't really press all the way up here very easily. Most phones have the button. Well, most phones have the button on the left side for one reason, but most phones have the button a little bit further down to get it easier to reach. So I guess it's nice that you won't accidentally ever hit the power button, but it is a little bit of a pain when you actually have to rearrange how you're holding it to press the power on. It's not something that you will natively hold your hand like this, because most of the time you're used to holding it as such. So you have to really stretch to press the screen power on. It's a minor annoyance, but it is something to be aware of. As far as the operating system goes, It is running Android Lollipop 5.0.2, so it's not 5.1, and in all likelihood it's not ever going to get 5.1. But for a budget device that it's already on Lollipop, and we're not really going to dock at any points for that. Lollipop, it was designed to be used long term, and so with the way Android is nowadays, you can really get a lot of use out of a phone that is on one generation of device. Most phones that are on Jelly Bean or higher can still use all the latest features. Now it's kind of getting to the point where it might be KitKat, but you'll have a good 2 years out of this phone at least with the operating system as is. Taking a look at the camera, the quality of images is actually very good for a budget phone. It's not exactly something that I would put up there with some of the best phones I've seen, but the images are rather pleasing. They're not particularly sharp in some cases, and the video itself is very soft. You can look at our video samples and our picture samples. Overall, the camera is a little bit soft. The front-facing camera produces a bunch of noise, so while that actually is relatively sharp, it doesn't handle noise reduction very well. Maybe that might be due to the processor, that might be due to how the camera lens itself functions, but there is a good amount of noise in the front-facing camera. Even still, you are going to get some fairly decent-looking images out of this camera, much better than you would get out of the Moto G. And definitely not images you'd be ashamed of sharing with others. The performance of the device is actually pretty good compared to other devices in its price range. It is much faster than the Moto G, but it is going to be noticeably slower than even last year's flagship phones. So any phone running the Snapdragon 800 or faster is actually going to blow this thing out of the water in most tasks. But in day-to-day usage, going through apps, looking at emails, web pages, things like that, it runs pretty well. There is some slowdown when you're loading more intense web pages with a lot of moving images. But overall, for the price range, it performs about as well as expected. It's not something that I would say is class leading, but for its price range, it is definitely no slouch. One thing about this one that is class leading, though, is the dual front-facing speakers. They don't really compare with something you'd find like in the HTC M series, but compared to almost everything else, this is a lot better for listening to music, watching movies. Not only do they get loud, they also sound very, very clear. So it's definitely sound enough to fill a room. I have found myself not actually putting my phone onto my Bluetooth speaker just because the speaker is actually pretty good in quality compared to even, something you'd get for $30, $40. So the difference really wasn't great enough for me to actually make the effort to plug it in. So, when you get to that point, the quality is nothing to worry about. The battery life on this phone is actually pretty good. Getting 1 day out of it is no trouble at all. If you use your phone a lot like I do, or if you are somebody who lives in an area where you go in and out of signal like I do, you probably won't get 2 days out of this, but 1 day should not be an issue. Today I've had it off the charger since about 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's about 6 o'clock now, almost 7 o'clock, and I've had about 2 hours of screen time. I still about 50% battery onto it. It's not exactly class leading in that respect. It's a 2900 milliamp battery, but if you're somebody who is used to charging up every night, there will hardly ever be a time when you actually run out of battery in the middle of the day. I have gotten 4 hours of on-screen time, so if you do use a lot of the screen, that is not an issue with this phone. Connection speeds and strength has been about what I expected for this phone. Compared to the OnePlus One, the signal strength is actually about the same. You do get more band support with this phone than you do in the OnePlus One, especially if you are on T-Mobile. So you may find your signal strength is actually much improved. In my case, in the Seattle area, it's about the same. I was able to get, in the 20s for download speed over LTE. It has been higher than that in some areas, but that is about average for me. And over the speed over Wi-Fi is also really good. Being able to get 100 plus shouldn't be an issue if you actually do have the bandwidth on your end. Call quality on this phone is decent. It's kind of funny with a phone that actually is so focused on the speakers that talking over the phone using it as you normally would instead of using speakerphone, the sound is actually a little quiet. The nice thing is you can use either side, so you can hold the phone upside down or upside down to do your call. But for me, I had a little bit of trouble hearing people, especially in noisier areas. Going to speakerphone, though, alleviated all those issues, but it's not something that you can do at all times. Overall, we really like this phone. For the price range, there isn't really that many better options out there. There is the Asus Zenfone 2 that was just also recently released. It's about the same size. The battery life's about the same. You couldn't get it in about the same options. There is a $199 option, whereas this phone is now $250. So if you are a little bit budget strapped, the $199 option may be a little bit better. But comparing the $199 and the $250 option for this one, this is probably a little bit better overall, especially due to the speakers. But other than that, none of the new phones for this year have come out yet. So at this moment, this is probably the best option, especially if you are somebody who is really into using their phone speakers. So if you want to make presentations, if you actually want to watch movies somewhere where you can't always use headphones, this is where you want to be. They actually do come with a decent pair of headphones in the box. Obviously, we couldn't show them in the unboxing because that was lost, but they do come with a nice pair of JBL speakers in the box, so it's much better than you would get in normal phones. But this is a device that was meant to share music with, and in that case, it succeeds. With no real weaknesses in the phone, other than some unusual button placements, it's really hard to not recommend this phone to you guys. It performs reasonably well. The camera is on the better side. The screen is great. The speakers are great. The call quality, at least in quality, is good, and it's a little on the soft side. But all those things could be fixed with software updates. If you can get a OnePlus One for about the same price, if you don't really need the speakers, I would probably still go with that one. And if you don't need the speakers and you want to save some money, probably the Zenfone might be a better option for you. But if you like having good speakers and you want a nice device with a long list of feature set, there is NFC, there is a micro SD card slot in here to add more storage. There isn't really any other options you can go for that would give you this much bang for your buck. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been our quick review of the Alcatel Onetouch Idol 3. This is LOH Low Tech. Subscribe.